Hello everyone and welcome back to Married with Comics. It's time again for our pull list video to talk about the upcoming titles that we are grabbing and that we recommend that you take a look at. More information coming very soon. Hello everyone and welcome back to Married with Comics. I'm your host Laura and this is the returning co-host, my husband Scott. I know he was gone for all of one video. I had to give the titles
like
for
much
him.
more.
It was so long. Oh my goodness, how on earth did we ever survive? So before we get into the pull list titles, just a reminder, we are definitely growing. We have shot way past 300 already. We are heading towards the 500 subscriber giveaway. More giveaways are coming. Just keep continuing to like, comment on the videos because you remember last week's pull list video? I asked all of you to help us grow, and that one, because of your help, was actually our best performing pull list video. So it really does make a difference if you are liking and commenting on these videos. It helps algorithms, it makes Google happy, and it helps us grow. So
and we all know Google runs the world.
Pretty much. So really
Whatever
appreciate
makes
you
Google
all.
happy.
If it makes Google happy, we're happy. So the titles that are coming out this week.
Yes.
I mean, the most obvious, most exciting title of all of them is King Spawn #1. So excited for this one. So there are a lot of variant covers that are coming out. Obviously, there's the humongous $1,000 cover that, I mean, if you're going all out, this is your opportunity to get an exclusive signed Todd McFarlane cover. For me, I am channeling it back just a little bit, and instead I'm going with two different covers for this particular issue. I went with the Todd McFarlane cover, and I chose the Booth cover. The reason I chose the Booth cover is you'll notice in the background there are all these different characters from the Spawn series. So what they're going to do is they're going to take Spawn the Redeemer and Gunslinger Spawn. Each one of these issue #1s are going to have a connecting cover with all the characters from the Spawn series, and then they will all kind of match up. I saw the outline from Todd McFarlane, and it looks really, really cool. So I got the first of that connecting series. And that's it for my new series, at least this week.
Okay. So on the new series radar for me is one that, especially after the Black Widow movie, if you weren't interested in, I hope you became interested in. It's going to be Winter Guard issue #1. So in this one, you go on a red roller coaster ride with some of our favorite Ruskies. You have the Red Guardian and Yelena, also known as the White Widow, both who were in the newest Black Widow movie. You have, in this version, you kind of have the two of them going back into their old territory, their old stomping grounds, but maybe on the other side, and being chased by their quote-unquote replacements. So it sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. I've been waiting for this one pretty much since I heard it was coming out, even before I watched the new movie. And watching the new movie and seeing what I thought was a great job done by the actor and actress that portrayed those two characters in particular, I'm like, oh man, I hope they were getting some of that from this new series that's coming out. So we'll see.
So for our ongoing series, the first one that I'm excited about is Wonder Girl #3. It's written by Joelle Jones, covers done by her again. Phenomenal series. The only thing I will...
Wait, it's written by who?
Joelle Jones.
I was waiting to see if her voice went up 2 octaves like it did when we met Joelle at the Comic-Con.
Oh, yes, it did. Oh, yes, it did.
Sorry. Please continue.
Trust me.
We love you, Joelle.
That story is coming very soon, but
It was hilarious.
yeah. Yeah, there are no words.
Wonder Girl.
Wonder Girl. The only thing that I will say, so Yara Flora, of course, is the new character in the DC universe. Very excited for her, and we're learning a bit more of kind of her Brazilian history. The only thing that I'm noticing, so I am not a huge Wonder Woman fan. I don't know as much of that character and some of the other characters that are in that storyline outside of the movies. Right now, what they're doing is they're introducing a lot of Wonder Woman characters into Wonder Girl, which is great. And so for someone who really knows Wonder Woman, you're going to actually appreciate it a little bit more. for people like me, like I said, I'm still able to follow the storyline, but it's reminding me a lot of the new Thor series by Donny Cates, where if you know some of that history, it just kind of adds an extra level to your appreciation of the story. So I'm hoping that they don't start losing new readers like me, that they don't kind of go way over our heads, but we're starting to get more and more of those characters that I know there's a backstory on, I just don't know all of it yet.
Mm. Cool. So something that you might be interested in reading so that you know more about the characters would be Wonder Woman Black and Gold. Issue 3, I believe it is, drops this week. That one in particular, I think from an artistic viewpoint, has been awesome. From a storyline viewpoint, it's been kind of cool. So they take different little vignettes of her past, kind of as like a flashback, but you also get to see some kind of more, contemporary storylines that are going on. It's really kind of a neat little mix and match of like Wonder Woman history with Wonder Woman present with just Wonder Woman. But artistically, again, oh my God, the covers, the variant covers, the interiors, I'm a fan. So that one is definitely on my list this week.
Because I just mentioned Thor number 16 drops this week. It's the Donny Cates series. Actually, this particular run of Thor is the very first one that I had ever read. I read it because so many people kept recommending it and talking about how amazing it was. And like I said, it's really, really well done. They do definitely incorporate a lot of the old characters. So I'm sure as I keep reading more Thor, I'm going to start appreciating it a little bit more. This one is kind of continuing that showdown between Thor and Odin, which that is never a boring topic.
Never. Black Widow, number 10, is dropping. So we've got the new foe that she's been facing, and Apogee. We have, his little followers, the Olio, that they refer to themselves as. And we've got a new character that they introduced. And then, of course, Natasha and Yelena, so the Black Widow and the White Widow. And also another character from Marvel that I won't spoil it if you've not read it yet, but they're in the Spider-Verse. I'll just say that. Anyhow, you've got this kind of like, are they going to be a team? Is this going to be a constant thing? What's going to happen? Well, apparently in this issue, it's sort of coming to a head. There are certain things that are going to happen that will kind of line out what the next little bit of the storyline is going to be for one of my favorite characters, in Natasha, the Black Widow. San Francisco's fate apparently is hanging in the balance while they figure this out. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Dun, dun, dun. Norse Mythology, number 3, is another one that, obviously, if we're talking about Thor, you need to kind of understand the world of Thor and Loki. So if you were a fan of the TV series Loki, highly recommend this series. It's written by Neil Gaiman, so it's just very, very well done, and this is actually volume 2, issue number 3. So with Norse mythology, you don't actually have to know anything about any of the characters. You could still kind of jump in and have a lot of fun.
So here's the thing I would say about Norse mythology. It's based on the actual original stories, not the Marvel Universe's take on them. And I mean that in a positive way. It's fun to read just as if you like history, period. If you're into mythology of different cultures, period. If you don't know anything about comic books or Thor or any of the movies, I think you'd still get something out of it if you're a fan of just myths. However, besides Loki, if you happen to catch Ragnarok, which is another series on Netflix, I feel like the Norse mythology books tie much more closely to that, because that's more rooted in strictly the mythology, less of the Marvel cinematic creation. And either way, if you're a fan of Thor, Loki, or Ragnarok, definitely check out Norse mythology. That would be my recommendation.
Definitely.
Speaking of recommendations, though, so I've been talking about this series, and it's one of mine that I've been reading. I don't think Laura has, but Sonjaversal. So Sonjaversal number 7 comes out this week. What Sonjaversal has done is said, you know what, if everybody else out there can have, multiple universes and interactions, and why can't we at Dynamite do the same thing? So they've taken these different Sonjas from different, not just like universes, but also different kind of eras. So, for example, in 7, we meet steampunk yellow Sonja, because not all of them are red.
Yeah.
They're all different color coded too. It's kind of cool. It's like a box of crayons when you get all the girls lined up. You got purple, red, orange, yellow. Yellow Sonja is steampunk though. I'm really looking forward to this one. If you're a fan of Sonja at all, the character, then I think you would really appreciate the way that she interacts with herself in different versions. It's kind of fun.
And if you are interested in checking out Red Sonja and you're not sure where to jump in, I highly recommend the Gail Simone run. That one's my favorite. Next one for me is Once and Future number 19.
Oh, for us.
Yeah.
Oh, such good.
So Once and Future is best described as take kind of the King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table legend and put it into a snow globe and shake it up really, really hard and then create a story in modern times with Arthur coming to our world and all those monsters and all those creations, and then take every single thing that you thought you knew and turn it on its head.
Well, but it's not just King Arthur's legend. It's British literature.
Yeah.
Literally.
There's a little bit of everything in that story.
Because you get some Beowulf in there, you get some Grendel, you get some Green Knight, you get a lot.
And the only thing that I give is my disclaimer. So I've read some of these stories, Scott's read some of them, but I will say our previous knowledge of those characters didn't make a single ounce of difference in this story because they're kind of reinventing them. So sure, you know, if you read Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, great, but this version of Sir Gawain is very different from the original, and you don't need to know that version first before you can appreciate this one. So it's a complete action-adventure story, incredibly funny. There is a deluxe edition coming out soon. The characters are great. The only thing I will say is even though Scott tends to read them kind of as they are released, I like to kind of grab a chunk of about 4 or 5 issues. And this, I believe, is going to get me to about my 4th issue. So now it's time for me to read my chunk, get caught up, and then wait for another round of Once and Future.
Speaking of ones that I read as soon as they come out, Extreme Carnage, Riot, number 1, drops this week. It will be part 5 of 8 from this Extreme Carnage run. I've been devouring them. I was not thinking I would be as into them as I am. I love that they don't pull any punches. I love that they kind of are all self-explanatory as an individual unit, and yet they still are all tied together. There's common threads. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of action, but there's also a lot of, there's a hint of a detective story in it. Like there's a bit of a, we're still not really sure what's at the center of this. I mean, we know Carnage, but we don't know other characters that keep popping up what their role is yet. And that's really intriguing to me and keeping me hanging on. As soon as I finish one, I'm like, is the next one out yet? Is the next one out yet? Is it next week? Is it this week? Well, I get another one this week. Extreme Carnage Riot.
And speaking of ones that you read as soon as they arrive, Barbaric number 3 arrives this week.
You and your axe.
Oh my gosh. So that axe, the concept, of course, is you have the barbarian who enjoys killing people because he's a barbarian. Come on.
That's what they do.
But then you have a talking axe that wants to be fed blood. But he will only let the barbarian kill people who have a justified death, or basically who deserve death. Yeah. So he's always seeking blood, but he has to have that justification. So sometimes you'll have the banter back and forth of the barbarian like, come on, I really just want to kill that guy. Has he done anything wrong yet? Oh, now he did something wrong. Now let's go. And then you also have a sorceress that's now kind of added to the mix of these two, that the original banter was good. You throw her in the mix and it's really interesting. This is actually going to be the end of the first story arc. So I don't know how many story arcs we're going to get with Barbarian. I don't care. I'm along for the ride. It's just a ton of fun.
Cool. So speaking of fun, Amazing Spider-Man 72 drops this week. And it's going to be a tie-in to the Sinister War series that's going on separately. They're poking a little fun at themselves. They're like, hey, Spidey's facing the Savage Six and the Sinister Six. What's he doing here? Well, the idea behind the comic is one that I think they're going to have a little bit of fun with it themselves. Even though it's a tie-in, it's going to have some obvious roots. It's going to have some storyline, some crossover, etc. I think that it's going to be a little bit of a lighthearted take on it. I could be totally wrong on that. If it drops and you read it and you're like, nope, sorry, I was wrong. But I think that the Sinister War itself has been a lot of real heavy, like gravitas. It's pretty dark, so I think they might take a little bit of a light jab at themselves with this one. We'll see. But that drops this week.
Next one for me is Dark Blood number 2. So I talked to you all kind of briefly about Dark Blood number 1. The series has a ton of potential, and the only thing I will say with issue number 1, they're still kind of building the storyline, so they kept jumping, timelines, and they're still getting to that next point where at least now we know exactly where they're heading with these characters. So I'm hoping that issue number 2 is going to give me the direction that I'm looking for of, okay, where are you going with all of this? And then I can decide whether I'm going to continue with the single issues or if I'm just going to wait for the trade or maybe say it's just not for me. We'll see.
So I have Detective Comics on here. This is issue, I think it's 1042. Batman's been facing the jury because there was already a judge, but essentially the jury kind of got what he wanted in the last issue, we think, with Batman. And Batman's now gone off on this little rampage. But is that really a good idea? We'll find out in this issue. I think the Red Hood tie-in is also going to be pretty cool because Red Hood's in this one. The synopsis stated as when Red Hood shows up in your apartment, you know you've done something wrong. Like, cool. This could be very fun. Ultimately, though, the detective series has never disappointed me. It's still doing really well. I love the artwork on it right now. I love the covers. We still are going for the B covers, but hey, to each their own. And this is going to be another one that's going to knock it out of the park, I think. Hopefully going to answer some questions too, though, because there's some stuff they really need to start tying up, I think.
So the last one, single issue-wise, is Department of Truth number 12. I keep saying I'm going to get caught up on this series, and I will. The problem that I have with Department of Truth is there are so many different layers of the story and so many different kind of conspiracy webs that are being woven all at the same time that if you take a huge break like I have from the series, you have to actually go back to the beginning and reread or at least skim over and then continue on with the series. So I have reread issue number 1 through 5 twice now. This is going to be time number 3, which is also part of the reason why I am not looking forward to the fact that I've got to go reread a comic book again. It's really good, and it's very worth it, and I'm now starting to hear some reviews saying that the series is now getting even better than when it first started, which is great. I'm hoping when I start getting caught up again that maybe this will be enough that I can either stay caught up or I won't have to ever go back to the beginning again, because that's getting a little obnoxious.
So the last one on my list is, thanks to the shirt, The United States of Captain America. This is issue 3. For those of you who aren't familiar with the series or haven't been reading it yet, Cap's shield gets stolen. He and the Falcon set off on a cross-country trip following clues to find it and apprehend whoever it was that stole it, apprehend the thief. And in the process, they meet other Captain Americas as they're traveling through these different areas. It's been really cool. Like, the concept almost sounded a little corny to me at first. It's like, oh, I'm Captain America of the blah. And I'm like, really? But then you go back to like the roots of what Captain was designed for, what he was drawn for. I mean, like the original way back. And you look at how he was used, and let's face it, in propaganda, but in a positive way. He was, trying to bolster our image and the image of the U.S. versus, whoever the enemy happened to be at the time. Still love the cover of him punching out Hitler. It's like one of my all-time favorites. However, if you look at that and then you think like, well, isn't that the idea behind the shield, in that he's to inspire each one of us to be our own captain and be our own hero, right? And as he's traveling in this series, he's meeting some of those. So it's really kind of cool. I mean, he's met a female Cap. he's meeting a Native American or indigenous cap in this next issue. It's kind of neat, and I like the tie-ins that they've done so far with it. So looking forward to the next one.
So trades that are coming out this week. I will say I didn't see a lot that kind of sent me very far. The only one that I eventually will grab is, I've talked to you all about kind of the Marvel portfolio art books that have, you know, the big size prints of some of these absolutely gorgeous covers. This one is going to be InHyuk Lee's. I had seen, of course, the Symbiote Amazing Spider-Man cover, which thankfully we did get that comic book cover, but he's got a couple others that I really, really love his artwork. So that's one that I will definitely be grabbing at some point, but just kind of keep an eye out for that one.
Cool.
So only questions, of course, for you all is, what are you grabbing? What do you recommend? Or are you starting to kind of save up now for Black Friday? Because I think almost everyone that I've been talking to lately has been, you know, we've spent our comic book funds over the summer, and now everyone's kind of dialing it back a little bit.
I guess, yeah.
But it seems like for all it takes is, you know, fall, and we all kind of fall back a little bit on our comic books.
It's my favorite time to read, really, to get caught up on the reading, too.
The pile is growing.
The less I buy, the more I have time to read what I have. Or somehow I reason that out of my head. Really, it doesn't have anything to do with it. But yes, it keeps me from spending more money when I have a whole shelf full of stuff at home that I haven't read yet.
Dun, dun, dun. Yes. So this is Laura and Scott from Married with Comics. Please, please make sure to like, subscribe, share. We really appreciate you all. And we will see you all again very soon. Have a great day, everyone. So meet the Irish Greyhound, the amazing Jameson. So this is, of course, the one that has well earned his Jameson name. Mm-hmm. He is the sweetest. He's not quite like being up in the lap right now. He would much rather be on a bed, our bed preferably. But here you go. Our YouTube debut.
Jameson.